If you didn't know, Pokemon are split up into various color categories. And while most of them make sense, like Pikachu being in the yellow category, others are just straight up wrong. Take Snorlax for example. Its main two colors are blue and tan, so you would think that it would be in the blue or maybe even yellow category, but no, Snorlax resides in the black category. I'm sorry, but that is definitely blue on its body. This means that Snorlax can be used for this Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon Hardcore Nuzlocke. However, mons like Charmander are clearly orange, but they have to be placed in the red category since there is no orange group, so I won't be able to use Pokemon that experience the same situation. Real quickly, if you don't know the rules of a Hardcore Nuzlocke, on top of the normal Nuzlocke rules, I can't use healing items in battle, the battle style must be on set mode, and there will be a level cap for each trial and grand trial. It's also worth mentioning that the only time I've played through Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon, I only made it to the second island before stopping, meaning I've never fully beaten the game. And apparently, these games are some of the hardest to Nuzlocke, so I'm sure everything will go just fine. Anyways, if you want to see more of this type of stuff, then be sure to hit that sub button as it helps out the channel a lot. And without further ado, let's see if I can beat a Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon Hardcore Nuzlocke only using wrongly colored Pokemon. Professor Kukui gave me the option between Poplio, Litten, and Alolan Meowth. You know, the usual Alolan starters. So naturally, I went with the Alolan Meowth. No, seriously, this thing is classified as being blue, but it and its evolution are definitely gray. Anyways, Meowsy already knew Bite, so the first match with Hal was a piece of cake. I then risked my life for a ball of space fog or whatever Cosmog is made out of, before meeting the Ultra Recon squad and challenging Hal once again at the festival. Despite him owning two Pokemon, one was just a Pichu, so we had no issues. Over at the trainer school, I picked up a Zorora. Look, I know the fur around its neck is black, but the rest of its fur also looks black to me, so it should not be listed in the gray category. I had no idea that the teacher at the end of the trainer school used a Litten, so that was kind of scary, but afterwards I snagged an Abra in Hau'oli City. Abra is categorized as brown, and while it does exhibit a little bit of brown, most of its body is clearly yellow, so I'm using it. Just not right now though, since it only knows Teleport, which didn't help in the battle against Captain Lima. Zorora barely managed to get by Yungoos, while Meowth only lived thanks to a lucky flinch on Smeargle. Unfortunately, Meowth and Zorora reached a level 13, which was one level above the cap before the first totem battle, due to all of the mandatory fights in the early game. So from now on, I'll say that I need to stay below the level cap before entering a trial, and then I can go over the level cap during a trial or totem battle. Speaking of which, Gumshoos was pretty tough, as I had to sack off Zorora in order to get rid of the speed drops on Meowsy, who was then able to knock out the totem Gumshoos. Losing Zorora isn't the worst thing in the world, as I don't really need two dark types on my team. And I had the opportunity to catch a Mankey on Route 3 who also resides in the brown category. I mean, maybe its fur is just a really light brown, but in my eyes it's more of a tan color, which should fall under being yellow. I got the chance to test out my new team member against the Ultra Recon squad, who gave me some problems with their dumb Furfrou. I actually had to use all three of my team members just to win. Outside of the meadow, Hal was another easy dub, so it was on to our first grand trial. Luckily, Hala's fighting types didn't stand a chance against Kadabra, as even after taking big damage from Machops Revenge, Crabrawler hid itself in confusion, and Makuhita only wanted to go for Sand Attack, so Kadabra completed the sweep. Immediately afterwards, I caught a Munchlax on Route 1 for the same reason I mentioned at the beginning of the video, and I nabbed a Spinda in the farthest hollow. Just like Mankey, this thing is considered to be brown, but it has more of a tan color scheme in my opinion. Heck, I would have been fine if it was considered red because of its spots, but no, Pokemon are just weird like that. Oh, and Meowth also evolved into Persian during this process. Upon exploring Hiahia City, Dexio challenged us to a battle, but his Mime Jr. and Espeon stood no chance against my newly evolved Persian. Just past him on Route 4, I added an Eevee to the team. Now it's not Eevee's color that I have a problem with, but it's a Leafeon's. Leafeon is categorized as green, and sure, there's a bit of green on it, but most of its body is once again that tan/yellow coloration, so I'm gonna use it, considering Eevee lives long enough to become a Leafeon in the first place. Hal still didn't really put up much of a fight in Paniola Town, so I moved on to Gladion, whose Type Null left Persian with 10 HP, but thanks to some flinches from Bite, we got the victory. Down in Brooklet Hill, it was time for the Totem Araquanid. I got up a few screeches with Munchlax before having to switch into Eevee, who only landed one quick attack before dying. Yeah, so looks like we're not getting Leafeon. On the bright side though, thanks to the defense drops, Persian had no problems cleaning up the rest of the fight. This allowed me to catch a Surskit, who will be our next team member. Look at Masquerain. Is its body blue? The correct answer is no. You cannot tell me that Masquerain is blue. It should definitely be in the white or maybe gray category, but not the blue one. I also backtracked to the Melamela Sea to catch a Mantike. Now, Mantike also sits in the blue category, so naturally, Mantine is also considered blue, right? No, for whatever reason, Mantine is purple. Like, no, that is just wrong and it makes no sense. After obliterating the Ultra Recon Squad's Poipole, we had to face the Totem Alolan Marowak, and boy was this thing tough. I got off a Screech with Snorlax before sending out Masquerain just to get off the Intimidate before letting him go down. Man, I just can't keep these new team members alive. I then sent in Persian, went for Fake Out on Salazzle while Marowak wasted a Detect, and flinched Marowak on the next turn with Bite, allowing Persian to finish it off the following turn. Holy cow, that flinch may have just saved this entire run. I still had to throw Mantike out there to deal with Salazzle, but I'm just glad that luck was on my side for once. Now, after doing some research and even watching some other YouTubers do hardcore Nuzlockes of Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon, I realized that I should probably be a bit more lenient with the level caps, as that seems to be what most people do, since in the totem battles, not only are you facing a Pokemon with boosted stats, but you're battling two Pokemon at once. Not to mention, I'm only using wrongly colored Pokemon, meaning my encounters are limited even more. So from here on out, the new level cap will be 3 levels above the highest leveled Pokemon in each trial and grand trial. Speaking of which, the final trial on Akala Island involved that pesky Lurantis, but all it took was Lurantis to hit itself in confusion a couple of times thanks to Mantine's Confuse Ray, and Snorlax to body slam the rest of the way. You know, it was nice to make it through a totem battle without losing a Mon for once. This opened up the opportunity to catch a new team member in the lush jungle, who ended up being Steenie. Now this one's kind of up in the air, as I can see why it's categorized as being purple, but similar to Leafeon's case, I feel like white is the more dominant color here, so I'm gonna give myself this one. Plumeria tried to ambush us before the second grand trial, but her team didn't pose too much of a threat, and Olivia's rock types got wiped out by Primeape's Cross Chop. Well, that was surprisingly easy. The next stop on our island challenge was the Aether Paradise, where we met all the very nice and kind workers. I'm sure they would never be evil. The next match with Hal was the toughest one yet, as a couple of my Pokemon experienced close calls, but we still made it through death-free. Togedemaru was probably the easiest totem battle up to this point, as it only took one Screech and a few Brick Breaks from Snorlax and Primeape to get the job done. Even Guzma was more difficult, as his Golisopod put up a good fight, but that's about it. Just before the next trial, I made sure to pick up a Frillish, who is apparently white. I mean, why couldn't Game Freak have just grouped them together into the pink or blue category, since I don't think they can be separate because they share the same Pokédex number. But no, you went and categorized them as white, which makes no sense. It was a good thing that I caught Frillish though, as my team took a big hit against the Totem Mimikyu. Snorlax landed a Screech before I had to sack off Persian. I then sent out Mantine in order to get rid of Mimikyu's disguise ability, but that's about all he could do. Serena then smacked Mimikyu with a Trop Kick, while also lowering its attack, before joining Persian and Mantine in the death box. Finally, thanks to the attack drop, Primeape finished the job. Losing Persian and Mantine isn't too big of a deal, but Serena was a really solid grass type who I now no longer have access to. The second battle with Plumeria was just about as easy as the first one, so I made my way to the Ula Ula Meadow, where I caught my final encounter for this Nuzlocke, Floette. It's really Flabebe that I have a problem with, as even though most of its body is a variety of colors, it's still listed as white due to its very small head. If it was me, I would have given this thing a different color, but I'm not complaining because now I can use a pretty decent fairy type. Floette was already making an impact in the second showdown with Guzma, as Primeape knocked out Pinsir, Alakazam handled Masquerain, and one Moonblast finished off Golisopod. Gladion was being a whiny baby back on Route 15, as he still wasn't on my level, so it was time for the third kahuna, Nanu. But because I owned a fairy and fighting type, my team didn't have many problems completing the third island. Following that was two battles against Faba, who's like a wannabe evil admin, but his team sucks, so he'll never be one. Especially since Guzma owns that role, and he actually is really tough. Spinda got off a Toxic on Golisopod before I had to let him go down. His emergency exit ability activated, so Vikavolt came out, which Floette was able to put some good damage on before getting wiped out by a flash cannon. Snorlax was able to finish the job though, Primeape had no issues with Pinsir, and Alakazam outlasted Masquerain. So it was back to Golisopod, who got outsped and killed by Primeape. Spinda and Floette really weren't all that great, but now I only have 4 team members heading into the Lusamine battle. However, I had to deal with the Ultra Recon squad one more time before the big showdown. Clefable didn't stand a chance against Snorlax, so it was on to Beware. I got in some good damage on it, but then the Lusamine switched into Lilligant, which threw off my whole plan. Now I had to sack off Primeape just to get Snorlax out on the field, but thanks to terrible confusion luck and Lilligant landing a critical hit, even he didn't get the job done. Alakazam did though, but I just didn't have enough health remaining to deal with the rest of Lusamine's team, bringing an end to this hardcore Nuzlocke. Now, technically, you don't have to win this battle for the story to progress, but I feel like this still counts as a loss, at least in my books. And I'm already too far into the game to start a brand new run, so I'm gonna go ahead and call it here. Man, I didn't even make it to the 4th island. This game really is brutal. I'm sure I could have made better plays earlier on in the run, which would have helped out in some of those more difficult battles, but Ultra Sun and Moon has to be one of the hardest Pokemon games to do a hardcore Nuzlocke on. Nonetheless, I had a lot of fun making this video, and I hope you guys enjoyed it just as much. For now though, have a great rest of your day, and until next time, deuces!